You want to start recording?
You're on.
Okay, thank you all. Welcome to the October 2nd regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, would you call a roll, please?
Mayor Rilling,
Present.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Gilleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis, Miss Yang. Here. Mr. Casimis. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we get going with our agenda tonight, so that I don't mess this up as I do regularly, Mr. Mayor, any remarks you'd like to make to open the meeting?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
I just said, are there any remarks that you would like to make to open the meeting, since I often forget to ask you?
No, that's fine. I'm good. Thank you.
All right, then we will get right into our agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, if we can, I'd like to try and keep this meeting to an hour. Personally, I have a hard stop at 7:30 p.m. Obviously, there's enough members of the board here to carry on without me, but if we can get it done in an hour, I would appreciate it. The first agenda item is the approval of the September 11th regular meeting minutes. May I get someone to please move that item for discussion?
So move.
Thank you, Kendrick. Any changes, additions, revisions, comments related to the minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes as currently written, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain. I was not at the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The minutes from the last meeting are approved. Given that there are no special appropriations, we will move to the transfer agenda beginning on page 10 of our agenda. I am going to suggest to the board that we move the transfer agenda in two pieces. First, the Recreation and Parks Department transfers, and then secondarily the rollovers, so that we can discuss those in two separate groups. So can I get a motion to review the Recreations and Parks transfer proposals?
I will move that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, you want to lead us in that discussion? I'm not
Yes.
sure if it's here to
So this
speak
is
to
just one regular transfer request from Rec and Parks over $5,000 as normal within the current fiscal year, unlike the rollovers that we were about to address. We have Ken Hughes and Robert Stowers on the line with us here. Ken or Robert, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you. Good evening. Just a quick explanation. So this is these accounts we have typically used to pay for our summer concert series, which includes EMS services and sound. Based on recommendations from the purchasing department, they have asked that we just consolidate all these funds into one account instead of having a change order, a PO pull from 3 different accounts. So this is more of a consolidation of funds. It's still being used for the same intent. It's just all being moved to one single account to make payment of invoices easier.
Okay. Any questions from any of the board members for Ken related to these transfers?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment. My wife and I attended virtually every concert on a Wednesday evening, some others as well. They are well received by the community. I think it's a wonderful program that we provide. And some of the concerts had as many as 500-600 people there and enjoying a concert, a nice night out on our beach. It was absolutely amazing to see. So I want to commend the Recreation and Parks Department for one more time having another great successful season.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would concur. Any other comments or questions from members of the Board of Estimate and Tax? Seeing none, all in favor of the transfers as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, those transfers are approved. Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate it. Next item is the various department rollovers. Can I get someone to move that for discussion and vote, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, I know there's a great number of these, given it's almost $3.8 million in expense that we want to roll over. And I know from earlier conversations, you said Mario would like to go first. So I'll turn it to you and Mario to talk about this.
Yeah, just one small correction. When the agenda first went out, that was on Friday morning. There was a subsequent meeting that was held. So there were some modifications to the operations and public works total number. So that 3.7 that you see on page 10 was the previous version. If you look to the summary page on page 12 in the bottom right, the new number is 4.2 million. So that's the amount of the rollovers that we'll be discussing this evening.
Thank you for the correction, Tom.
And with that, we will turn it over to Mario, who has a pressing engagement, so we can try to get him out of here first. Take it away, Mario.
Thank you. So we have a rollover request for the law department. It was for 100,000, which was reduced to 50,000. Quite simply, there's a lot going on in the city, and the law department has overall stayed within budget for many years and not really expanded as a department, even though, quite frankly, the work within our department has expanded. So our professional services budget is around 300,000. I think that's actually lower than what we'll need for next year. And so whatever we're able to roll over from this year would be helpful to avoid what I anticipate will probably be a deficit at some point next year on the professional services budget. There's a lot going on, including the acquisitions of numerous properties, which required us to basically do closings and to obtain title insurance. These are things in addition to what we normally do as a law department, and also our our citywide revaluation is taking place on October 1, 2023. Actually, today is technically the day. And so new values will be out in November, December. For property owners, we anticipate a substantial number of appeals with the commencement of a new revaluation cycle. We anticipate getting those appeals between April and June of this year. And there's substantial costs that we incur as a department to process those appeals, particularly to retain expert appraisers to provide us with input and eventually appraisal reports. So there's a lot of reasons why we think anything we could get in the rollover would be funds that would be much needed for our department this year. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, I believe I should amend my motion to reflect the actual amount that other than what's in the agenda. So I would move that we amend the item to actually show a rollover of $4,195,000 and $195,961. And that's a motion that I would make that would have to vote in order to make that correct.
Thank you. All approved of the amended motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion carries. Questions for Mario in particular? Okay, Mario, I do have one question if others don't. Are you confident, because you had originally asked for a rollover amount significantly higher than what we're recommending? Do you expect that the 50,000 will cover sufficiently the expense, or are we likely to see you come back later in the year for requests out of contingency for more investment?
When it comes to legal matters, it's hard to predict with any specificity what costs we would incur as for legal matters, especially litigation. So based on what we currently have, I'm hoping that we'll be within budget, but we just never know based on where things could go in litigation. I wish I could be more specific. I mean, the difference between 50 and 100,000, quite frankly, is not a big difference. So we always do our best, and the mayor encourages us to try to do our best within our budget.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Tom, where do we want to go next?
Then we can go right back up to the top registrar. We have Stuart Wells on the line, not a tremendous rollover, but they have a number of new initiatives, some of them driven by mandates out of their control that they would like to roll over funds for to try to position themselves better to cover everything. Stuart?
By the way, thank you for, before we're done, thank you for your time and consideration this evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, I'm here. I think we had one rollover, I believe, or 3,500, or is that still in there, or?
No, you had three different line items, Stuart, for a total of $8,600.
All right, but is that one of them, or?
You have 1,500 to 1,600, 2,500 and 3,000. Sorry, there are four of them.
All right, well, one of them was for a folding machine, which we bought in anticipation of needing it badly next year. The new early voting ballots have to go in envelopes. And folding is, if you pay the companies to do it, is 20 cents a ballot. And we anticipate having enough so that it would be cost effective to be able to fold them ourselves. Particularly, it would save us the cost of having to stock a lot of extra ballots because we wouldn't know how many we're going to vote at the polls and how many we're going to vote early. This way we can use the same ballots and fold them to keep up with the pace. So that's one. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I'd be happy to answer questions as to what the other items were. Somebody
Any
can.
questions for Stuart related to the 8,600 for the registrar's office? Okay, seeing none, Tom, maybe let's move to city clerk.
Yeah, so recall during the budget discussions for fiscal 24, there were a handful of approved hires that were pushed out to January 1st at the request of the BET. This is one of them for the webmaster. And at the time we made that decision, the caveat was that with any rollover funds, if they were available, we would attempt to pull the hire date forward a little bit, and that's what this is for on the webmaster.
Okay, and what does that do to the hire date? What's it accelerated to? Do we know?
Well, if it's approved, then we can get going on posting it right away. Perhaps they could get them in by November 1st or December 1st, but we have all heard just about every chief in the city say how difficult it is to hire. But you never know. Perhaps they'll get lucky, and perhaps it'll end up being January 1st anyway. But at least this gives them the option of pursuing it sooner rather than later.
Okay. Questions related to that rollover? Okay, perhaps then, Tom, we move to community services.
Okay, I see Lamond is on the line, and Deanna. Lamond has quite a number of items here totaling 890,000, the bulk of which is the Mid-Fairfield mental health item for 550,000, but I will let Lamond expand on that. You're on mute, Lamond.
I certainly am. I certainly am. Hi, good evening, and thank you again. Right, so to Tom's pointed out, the bulk of the request is the 550,000 that was approved by this board in June to support mental health services for the young people in middle school. So we're asking to roll that over. The additional, as you can see, are just items that we're asking. For example, I'll just highlight some of the ones, and if you have any clarifying questions, I could do so to your point regarding time. I do want to make a notation for early childhood. It's not to purchase supplies. That was done in error, and I spoke with Tom, but it already went to print. This is actually, the city of Norwalk is responsible for monitoring our early childhood centers. So we're asking to move that funding over because of COVID. We are behind, and we pay for those services to monitor the early childhood classes throughout our city. So it's actually to pay for monitoring. And then the other things for advertising, as you all know, we've engaged in a robust logo initiative, and we don't have a budget for that. So we've been asked to put the logo in different places. So we're asking for support of that. And then the other one I'll highlight, and I want to thank this commission too, that maybe some time ago, and thank to Mayor Rillen, that we do have to Tom's point, we were finally able to hire a fair rent coordinator. And if you would talk to Carlos, he would say he's extremely busy helping our workers navigate through tenant landlord challenges, rent increases and evictions. And we also have a part-time through this commission through our ADA. So I'm asking for this money to roll over to get them certified. We have a robust department. We'll love to have them get certified so that they are fully equipped as we look at new buildings or upgrading our buildings as needed. We have the proper training. I think I remember speaking, we weren't able to find individuals with these specific skill sets, but they're certainly up to the challenge, and we're very excited to have them on board. And then there's other promotional events. Our community services now is out and about. We serve our residents, and we attend a lot of community events. So different things that has the City of Norwalk logo and the number that they can reach. So when we're out to community events. And then the big one is the 150,000 for those that have had BET since I've been here. We weren't able to move the mini grant program prior to the fiscal year conclusion. And that is because we really wanted to be thoughtful and inclusive how we created the program. And so we're asking to use that money that was allocated or has been allocated for the past fiscal year, so we can use that money use those fundings for the 150,000. And then the other things, like entertain any questions. Some of these, the grant program from Fairfield County, that's a grant. So we're going over grant funding that we'll be working with Ms. Latoya Fernandez's office and so forth. Trying to keep it fast, but I definitely can entertain any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Lamont. I appreciate it. And again, please do not let my personal agenda gate the meeting. If there are questions, if there are things we need to probe deeper, please feel free to do so. That said, any questions for Lamont on anything he has presented, any of the rollovers that he has requested? Okay. Thank you very much then, Lamont.
Thank you.
Tom, do we
Deanna
want,
will,
yeah, do we want to move to economic and
sorry,
community?
Deanna will follow, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Are you all set, Lamont and Deanna?
Yes, Deanna, our health director, will follow.
I could just provide a couple of quick things for the health department to just add to what Lamont is saying.
Yes,
Thank you. You may recall that we had asked for a special appropriation to cover some deficits in the WIC grant. So you had approved that. We had successfully gotten more funding from the state to help support it. But we haven't heard yet over this current year if we'll get that additional funding. So we would like to roll this over because at this point we do not have notice that we'll get additional funding to cover our deficit. And then some of the other requests are because we had some delays in getting equipment and supplies this past year. And then also our clinics are up and running now. We had a staff shortage last year, but we're fully staffed now and we're offering more clinics. So we're hoping to roll over additional funds to support the ongoing operations of those clinics. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Questions for Deanna? All right, continuing to move right along then. Tom, do we want to move to economic and community development?
Yeah, we have Jess Vonashek here. Again, a couple of her items are similar to the webmaster, using rollover funds to attempt to pull forward hire dates. And then we have a little bit of TMP and Steve Kleppen with planning and zoning, but I see Jess is here. Take it away.
Great, thanks. Good evening, everyone. So I'll be speaking to economic community development, all the different departments. For code enforcement, we had a couple of positions that that you had asked us to delay the hiring for. And so we wanted to bring on the assistant deputy building inspector and also the blight inspector a little bit earlier than January. The business development and tourism, we have a position that is an online permitting and licensing ombudsman coordinator, and we were looking to move over $10,000 for that position. For TMP, we have a couple of things going on. One is we'd like to roll over funding for the Norwalk River Valley Trail. We have an open contract with Stantec and we want to be able to close that out. And in addition to that, we also have a union requirement to be able to provide safety uniforms for all of our TMP staff, especially when they're out on the roads doing signage and installations and light work. So that the rollover addresses that as well. And then for planning and zoning, we're looking at moving over about 27,000 for the zoning regulations rewrite. So that was a $200,000 effort to rezone the city, and 17,000 is required for that in particular. And then 10,000, we're looking to be able to bring on the deputy zoning inspector a little bit earlier than January the 1st as well. And the same that Tom had offered earlier, which is that we would post the jobs immediately if the vote was to go through.
Thank you, Jessica. Questions for Jessica? All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Tom, do we want to move to the Department of CFO then?
Yeah, sure. The total for Henry's World is $192,000. Neither Paul Gorman or Lisa Biagirelli are with us this evening, but Henry and I can talk to their requests. Both Paul and Lisa, a fair amount of their requests are related to the ongoing implementation costs and challenges that went along with QDS. There were some delayed bills that we opted not to pay while we resolved some of the challenges. So rolling over funds from last year to cover the bills for this year. So that's assessor and collector. Management and budgets is me. We did a lot of scrambling last year to cover things like office supplies and the copy equipment. You guys all get the budget books, you know how big they are. You can imagine what it takes to put these things together. Fortunately, we had money in our salaries because Agnes had not started until September, but this year we're fully staffed. So I want to try to avoid scrambling over the course of the year to cover everything. And then Sharon has just under $2,000 in requests, and I thought I saw her on earlier. Sharon, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
There she is. Go ahead. We're up to you on purchasing for your $1,900 in rollovers.
Thank you, everybody. Basically, it's for the PO box services that we have at the USPS. Unfortunately, inconsistently every January and July, they're increasing the rate for the PO boxes. So we would like to use these additional funds to cover this year's PO box.
Thank you. Any questions for Tom and Henry's departments, or Henry and Tom's departments, depending on who goes first? All right, very well. Seeing there are none, let's continue to move to the police rollovers.
Okay, on the police side, we have $682,000 in rollover requests. A fair amount of that is for retirement payouts. If you'll recall, again, during the 24 budget process, we had asked the fire department to create a separate line for retirement payouts, and that went fairly smoothly and it seemed to work. So we're rolling this out now to the police department. They are also part of what's called the DROP program, where you can better and more easily track upcoming retirements and plan for those payouts. So that's a fair amount of what those funds are. I see we have Chief Walsh and Deputy Chief Lepore on the line to talk to it. And Mickey was trying, but had some technical difficulties. Mickey, are you on? All
I
right.
see him. I don't know if he hears. I see him.
Yeah, it was just he will call me if okay. Yeah.
Chief, you want to
Here, I got Mickey. I'm just gonna turn it up and hold it next to my microphone. Probably not the best, but it'll work. Mickey, you're on.
Hi, everyone. My apologies. I'm having trouble with the audio in my link, but thank you for considering our rollovers. This is our annual request. It's a little bigger than usual, like Tom preempted to say. For the most part, there's two major issues. We've had a number, coincidentally, of senior personnel retiring this year. So their payouts, are fairly large. These rollovers allow us to use the vacancy money that was accumulated last year to pay out this staff without compromising next year's budget and putting us in a deficit ahead of time. So this will allow us to use the funds budgeted for next year's staff, and the vacancy money that was accumulated will be able to handle the payouts. There's also a couple of general supply chain issues where billing was delayed. The vehicle thing we've been battling all along, that we had to defer some of the money to wait till the vehicles came in so they can be paid. And that's kind of the general thing. I'll entertain any specific questions if you have them.
Questions for Mickey by anyone? I guess, Mickey, my one question, and you alluded to it, the vehicle, I'll call it saga, forgive me if that's an offensive word, it's not intended to be. Again, the rollover helps mitigate the majority of that. We don't expect to, I mean, you never know with supply chain, but we don't expect to see significantly more requests related to vehicle upfitting and other issues if we roll these dollars over. Is that a fair statement on my part?
Yes, to your point, like we discussed in the winter and early spring, we're sort of cresting that thing. Since January 1, we've decommissioned 26 cars. We plan to decommission another 10 within the next 4 weeks that were very, very old. Crown Victoria is close to 20 years old with well over 100,000 miles that we've deemed unsafe and inappropriate for patrol use. So right now we're working with Sharon Connors and DPW to auction those vehicles. So it's sort of acute since the new year, but we're working our way through it, and we see our way out of this in a few more months. And with all the vehicles that we still haven't even taken delivery of them yet. So there's still issues with getting this whole plan implemented.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
All right, and no other questions. Let's move to fire.
Yeah, so the fire department has a total of $733,000 in requests. They're a little light on staffing right now, so they're seeing an increase, an anticipated increase in their overtime expenses, and then some of their equipment as well, and some inspectors, some part-time inspectors that Chief Gatto has hired and looking to cover during some staffing challenges in that area. So I see Chief Gatto on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. That's correct, as Tom has mentioned. So we do have money in the wages and salary account that we'd like to roll over. We have 11 vacancies right now, and we're looking to hire at least 4 people before February, and they'd have to go into the academy, and that money would help pay for that. We're looking to project 3 retirement payouts of $45,000 each. That's $135,000. We're looking for extra money in the fire mechanics overtime account. Right now, he's the only one that's working full time. We're looking to replace him with a part-time, assistant mechanic, and that'll help with his overtime. And also, we do have a new hire of a part-time mechanic that was not funded. So that money we're asking to roll over will go into that account. And also, we are sending 1 firefighter to fire marshal school, which would be done by probably May of next year. And he has to be at the fire inspector salary. So all that $629,000 is really basically for salaries, vacancies, and the extra hires. The other page, we have $102,000. We're just requesting some rollovers from the medical dental account, $10,000 to purchase some expired AEDs that we carry. 77,000 for future deficits for the rise in fuel costs. It's left in that account. We do have 2,500 in hose that was ordered and has been back ordered. We're asking for 4,900. Every year we have officers training. For some reason, it was not given in the springtime, and we're looking to roll over that money to be able to give that class. 72,000 was rolled over by the BET back in June for the refurbishment of truck 2. That money is, we need that money because we haven't gotten the bill yet. They've had that truck now for 5 months and they're still working on it. And then 2 more smaller accounts, motor vehicle parts, just to cover some part increases. And of course, 4,000 to cover hydrant rentals. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for the chief? Chief, I have one, and perhaps I misheard, so forgive me if I did. But you indicated that part of the rollover was to fund a part-time mechanic that was not in the budget for this coming year. I understand that we may be able to fund it with rollover funds for this year, but does that put us at risk for future years, Chief, of unfunded headcount in the department?
I don't think so, to be honest, without having everything in front of me.
And one of the key things on the part-timers is it doesn't come with benefits and all of the associated administrative and overhead costs. So we tend to budget by dollar amount and then allow the division chiefs to manage as they see fit. So if he has money in his part-time.
Okay, so, so we
obviously
don't look at that on an FTE basis. We just look at it.
Yeah, obviously on the full-time side, that gets rigorous control and authorizations to go through the process, because as Henry likes to say, it tends to be a 30-year hire in the municipal world.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Tom. Again, any other questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief. Tom, shall we move to operations?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. So operations broken into three separate areas. Public Works, 748,000. Building Management, Alan Lowe's World had no requests. And then we've got 325,000 in Rec and Parks. So we will start with Vanessa, who is on the line.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate your time and your consideration so we can roll these funds. I'll go first with the Public Works portion. And pretty much what you see on that spreadsheet, we have different areas that we need to roll some money. The first one is just related to engineering. So it's just to cover some of the conference seminars, advertising when we advertise the bids. And the furniture is a small PO that we still have open for some couple of table chairs that we haven't received delivery yet. On the second portion of it, it's really related more to operations. And where you're going to start seeing the big numbers is that I want to remind you that during the budget operation process, we identify a couple of areas where we could cut some numbers due to the light winter that we had. And one of them was definitely the salt, because we didn't buy any salt last year. We had a very high price for salt last year. So we hold up to the last minute to buy and ended up that the winter did very well. So we had a little bit of rollover from that money. But it is very important that we ended up getting this money because we still need to buy salt. We ended up negotiating a better unit price for the salt this year than was last year. With the consideration that we're going to be able to roll over from last year. Besides that, also there is the overtime for those guys, and it's the same thing. We reduced a little bit our original request for this year expecting that we could roll over their overtime salary to be able to meet the regular costs that we use on a regular winter. Besides that, you're going to see a little bit of increase of what we're asking for a rollover is related to our garbage collection. And one of the reasons for that is that we have been providing bulky items, curb collection. And just so you guys can have an idea, when I started this pilot program a few years ago, usually we have about 20 to 30 stops. The last couple of months, we've been hitting 140 to 150. So there is a cost associated to haul that we pay per ton, plus of course the overtime on our regular guys. We do that not as a third party, it's not through Win Waste, it's actually our own guys. So we ended up keeping them a little bit longer on the road on those days, plus we pay extra for hauling. I believe this at least cover most of my request. Again, I just want to emphasize that throughout our divisions building, we decided not to come after any of that money. So we're leaving behind about $170,000 that we didn't spend last year, but more focus on public works and operations. We really would like that you guys take in consideration our requests. I know that Rob and Ken will follow up with Rex and Parks, but I appreciate your time and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Vanessa. Questions for Vanessa from the board? All right, then let's go ahead and move to Rex and Parks, Tom.
I see Robert there. Your total is 325,000.
Right.
You are welcome to take it away.
Hey, can you hear me? Because I
Yeah,
have
sure.
my audio. If you look at our line items here, security systems, we're asking for about $65,062, and we're asking to cover our costs for our police that we contract with in the summer, our peak times at the park, particularly at the beach in the coastal parks, and we need to pay them. And so it generally goes over into the next fiscal year because of the summer. And so we need to pay them, and so we need to roll over that money to pay that contract. We have new staff that's onboarding, and so we'll need office space and furniture and supplies. And we have two new employees coming aboard, one arborist, horticulturalist, and then another rec supervisor. So we'll need supplies and furniture for that. As Ken talked about the transfers for the new jazz concert series, and also the sound expert for professional services. Again, these concerts, they end in the next fiscal year, so we need to also pay for our sound and our concert series. The next really bunch of expenses are really, it's about $68,954, and that's for equipment and supplies for our electricians and our plumbers and some of our parts that we need to do our work. But there's been shipping delays, and so we need to be ready to pay those when the equipment and supplies arrive. The other big component is about $154,954 for to cover salaries and wages and overtime for additional temporary staff that is going to be helping out in our expanded program offerings for this fall and winter. And that's basically it. We have some repairs that we need to do on our picnic tables that we're carrying over that money. That's really the bulk of our request, our rollover requests. So I've combined some of them because they were basically, we had a big component that was only due to shipping delays, and that's equipment and supplies, and then of course our wages and overtime. Also, our overtime, because of the weather, a lot of we had to defer a lot of things that we normally do in maintenance. And so we're gonna leave that money for overtime to catch up on some of the things we would have done had it not been raining so much. So we need this money to cover that, plus our temporary staff that we're gonna be bringing on to do some of these programs.
Thank you, Robert. Questions for Robert?
Which incidentally bringing revenue, so.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for Robert? Okay, seeing none, top, perhaps we move to BOE.
Yep, the final one, the Board of Education, they are looking at 444,000 for this year, and Lunda Esmani, the Board of Ed CFO, is on. I saw his name. Where did he go?
I'm on, but Kristen will take this one. She's on as
Oh,
well.
okay. All right, Kristen, you're up.
I don't know if it's me, but I don't see Kristen in the meeting.
Yeah, I don't either. Actually,
Okay. Oh, no problem. I'll take this one. Hold on. Let me turn my camera on real quick. I'm in the car picking up my daughter from a game, but hopefully you can see me. Oh, there we go.
It's fine. Just drive carefully.
Oh, yes, I'm parked. So, so we have two requests. One are similar to what Robert mentioned. These are supply chain issues, and so those are carryover POs in just over 250,000 or so. And then by statute, the Board of Ed is allowed to roll over 2% of any unencumbered resources from the current year. And this year, from that pocket, we have about 157,000 or so left to carry over, and that's what we're asking the BET for today.
Good memory, Lunda. You were spot on with the 157. The POs and deferred retirements was 288. So
Thank you.
Total of 444,000.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Questions for Linda?
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
if there are no questions, I would like to make a couple of comments. First, I want to commend all the department heads, as well as the NPS, Norwalk Public Schools. As you recall, we requested a limited amount of increase from year over year. And after all the budget presentations were made, we sent them back to the drawing boards and asked them to cut even further. And they did. And they cut well. And we also operated on a wants versus needs model. Whatever you needed, we would provide, but there are also things you might want that maybe now is not the right time. So when we started going over the rollover requests, I worked with Mr. Dakowitz and Mr. Ellis and Tom Livingston, and we looked at some of the things and we said, here's what we can do, because obviously there are things that were delayed that needed to be paid for. Obviously, there were things that might have been wanted before, but it wasn't the right time. Now we're reconsidering and saying, look, you've lived so much within your budget. You've done a remarkable job of coming in within your budget, and in most cases having some surplus, which was quite remarkable. That's a testament to the skills and the dedication of our department heads and members of the Norwalk Public Schools. So I just wanted to commend them, and I wanted to say that we support these carryovers, and we hope that the Board of Ed will, that the Board of Estimate and Taxation will consider it favorably.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any further comments before we vote on the rollovers? All right, all in favor of the rollovers as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The rollovers are approved. Thank you all. I echo the mayor's appreciation for all of your fiscal responsibility. Thank you very much. Moving to section C of our agenda tonight, other business. There is an authorization we are being asked to consider. Madam Clerk, can I ask you to please read the authorization that's on page 28 into the record?
Authorization, the Economic and Community Development Division is requesting authorization of a new appropriation to expend state of Connecticut issued rebates from the NIP bottle program. The current amount to date is 111 million.
No.
I'm sorry, 111,000 and 17 cents. 111,003.17.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Sorry about that.
$11 million in NIP redemptions would be quite impressive.
My
but,
apologies.
We'll take the 100,000. Can I get a motion to move this to discussion and vote, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, not sure who's here to discuss this item or if it requires discussion.
Yeah, I'll explain. For those of you who don't know the the nomenclature, nip bottles are also known as the airplane alcohol bottles, if you will, the little small containers that all liquor stores sell and far too frequently end up on the side of the road or places other than the garbage can. So a few years ago, the state of Connecticut started putting deposits on those, and then decided to issue rebates back to the cities and or the municipalities. And the way they do it is the handful of the largest liquor distributors in the state are tasked with keeping track of sales. I don't know if it's by zip code or whatever, but somehow by district, and we get an allocation. So we've gotten 3 allocations so far, or rebates, if you will, averaging about $35,000 each time every 6 months or so. So now we've got a nice chunk of change here, and there's some guidelines on how to spend that. And we have Jess Vanashek here, who will walk us through what the proposed plan is. Again, this is not a special appropriation. This is money that is already sitting in-house with the state or with the city. We are just seeking authorization and permission to go ahead and spend it within the guidelines. Jess?
Great, thank you very much. So we do not have a set proposal as of today for the 111,000, and we're going to be developing that with the mayor's office and some of the efforts that have been going on. But as you know, we've been making a very large effort to do additional landscaping in and around the city, do additional cleanup in and around the city, planting more than $1 million worth of trees. We're currently going through a tree canopy and tree inventory exercise. We're looking at heat islands and also looking at flooding and different climate efforts in and amongst that. So again, we don't have a specific plan for the 111,000 as of yet, but we would like to marry that with some of the other capital and operating funds that we do have to be able to achieve the goals and objectives that are under the mayor's agenda for the administration. And one thing that we will be doing is any effort that we will be putting forward, we will be putting an RFP together and putting a contract together. And of course, that contract will need to be approved by one of the committees, one of the Common Council committees and the Common Council for execution. So right today, I think that what we're asking is for that 111,000 and change. And wouldn't 111 million be great for all of us to solve so many of our, so if we could get lots of goals and objectives done then, but 111,000 it is. And so asking for that to be taken out of the general fund and into a separate account so that we have the separate account set up in order for all of that money to be deposited each and every year, as Tom said, around $35,000, and be able to follow those guidelines in the use of that money. One of the things that the state is asking us to do is actually fill out an online form that asks what that specific funding is used for and to be able to report back in a meaningful way. And so they are very stringent on those particular guidelines. And of course, we'll be working with DPW because there is overlap with the DPW department on those items as well.
Very good. Thank you, Jess.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor?
Sorry, I'm very talkative this evening. The other day, I sent to Ms. Valadares an item or an article I saw online that was selling the filters for the storm drains. And I know a lot of these nips and other things end up going into the storm drains and end up clogging or end up going into our system. So one of the things that we're going to be discussing, I want to look at starting a pilot program with the storm drain filters to see if we can cut or catch most of these things, then clean them out on a regular basis so that we don't end up with those things in our sound and our waterways. So this is something that's critically important, and I want to applaud the state of Connecticut for doing this and giving us this money so that we can use it in an effective way of helping to sustain our environment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other questions or comments related to the authorization request? Seeing none, all in favor of the authorization request as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The authorization is approved. Jess, if you can find $111 million, I applaud.
Well, I'm working on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Tom, I think we're moving into section D, other business for tonight or additional information. I'll let you drive that part of the agenda.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Lisa B is away on a well-deserved vacation. So she's not here right now, but the narratives in the report are included. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, you can feed them to either Henry or I, and I'll get them into the right hands of her staff to address. And I see that Alan and Denise have been waiting very patiently on the Oak Hill side. So take it away, guys.
Good evening, everybody. I'll keep the report short in the interest of time. We're now in, we've got 2 months in the bank for Oak Hills in our fiscal year. So I'll just talk about the month of August, how we're doing, and then also where we are year to date. So we look at revenue, we look at expenses, we look at operating income. So on the revenue side, we were able to do $345,000 worth of revenue. And then basically the budget was 294. So 51 grand over in our revenue. The reason being budget is more golfers out there. Continue the program. August be another good month for us. Our expenses, we came in at 214,000. The budget was 197. We were $17,000 over on our expenses. More revenue. Payroll was a little higher. So our operating income for the month was $131,000 compared to a budget of 97. So we find ourselves in the month of August with a $34,000 increase over our bottom line budget for the month of August, which obviously continues the good progress we're making so far. Looking at year to date, 2 months in the bank, we look at where we are year to date compared to budget, and also perhaps where we are year to date, compared to last year. So from a revenue perspective, $718,000 actual, $655,000 budgeted. So it was $63,000 ahead of revenue after 2 months. On the expense side, $414,000 worth of expenses actual, 398 budget, so 16 over to match the $63,000 in revenue. So our operating income stands after 2 months at $303,000 compared to a budget of $257, and that leaves us $46,000 ahead of our budget. So we do continue to do well in these first 2 months. Obviously, weather helps a lot. We're having still more golfers than we had this year over last year, and we continue. The out of towners continue to support us. Our golfers are from North continue to play. Our senior golfers have dropped down a little bit, and that's what we're seeing so far. So all seems to be going quite well on the financial side at Oak Hills.
Thank you, Alan. Questions for Alan? All right, very good. Anything else, Tom, in the additional items that we want to cover this evening?
Nothing formal, just to let you guys know where we stand in the, believe it or not, the 2025 budget process. We'll be working on pulling together the pro forma packages and getting those all out to the division chiefs and department heads by likely by the end of this month. So it begins again.
There we go.
And
our respite is over.
And there you go, Ed. It's 7:26. How about that?
All right. thank you all for your efforts to get through the agenda tonight. Any other items that anyone wants to raise before we move to adjourn? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Kendrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good evening, everyone. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you again in a month.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.